What's up, my dudes? Shout out to all of you guys out there that weren't scared to voice your opinion and you said things that you didn't like about the official Monster Energy Supercross game, and you came out and said things that you didn't like about MXGP3, talking about how when you came up short on a jump and it felt like you just landed on a pillow and there was no risk to coming up short on stuff. And you people out there that talked about how the whips and the air physics, you felt like you were way too restricted in the air. You felt like you couldn't hardly move in the air, and you felt like there wasn't enough skill gap in the game, and you wanted them to make the game just more realistic, not to an MX simulator level, just more realistic, more of a skill gap, more risk to coming up short, and more actual skill to the game, more movement on the bike. It's because of all of you guys that weren't scared to come out and voice your opinions. You weren't scared of that negative backlash. You are the reason why we have MXGP Pro. So I just want to take this time right now to thank all of you people. And I was one of those people as well, but you guys are amazing for doing that. And to all of you little shits out there that hated on me because of the things that I said about the official Monster Energy Supercross game, you're welcome. I gave you MXGP Pro. What they're putting into this game is basically every single thing that I disagreed with on the official Monster Energy Supercross game, and most of the things that I've had problems with all of these milestone games. It's just core physics problems. So that's how you get things changed. You have to voice your real opinions, people. That's how you do it. And so many people just kind of get lost in this positivity, neutral flutter, like, oh, it's just another motocross game, so we better love it. And it's like, dude, that doesn't make change in these games. That doesn't improve these games. You have to say exactly what you mean about it for things to ever change. And that's why I absolutely love you guys out there that say it like you mean it, dude. Don't give me the sugar-coated version. I don't want to hear the sugar-coated version. We're on YouTube, dude. They let you say what you want to say. Say it. Like, that's the whole point. So here we have MXGP Pro. So obviously there is a market of people that want this game, or they wouldn't even have made it. They would not have made this MXGP Pro right here if enough of us didn't come out and really speak truthfully about the physics in these milestone games. They just wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have had any sort of reason to do it. So I'm going to go into here on their website and kind of talk about a couple little different things. I'm sure you probably heard all this shit from some other YouTubers. I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball on this, but I just want to give my opinion on it, not necessarily just read it to you, but give my opinion on each one of these things. So technically, this is like MXGP 4 to a certain extent, I suppose. It's really cool to see them go down this route and actually wake up to the community that wants this stuff, because it's not a small amount of people that want this. The only people that don't want this are the people that don't really understand motocross gaming. They don't get it. They've never played more than 2 motocross video games in their whole life, and they just have they don't understand it. They do not get it. They just ride in real life, and they want to hop on a motocross game for 5 seconds, and they don't actually understand what the game is all about. They don't understand what these games are about. They're behind the wave of, like, these motocross games are getting way more realistic, especially with your MX simulator, and once Reflex came in. This is not the old days anymore, man, where it's supposed to just feel like some fake, shit where you're just floating around everywhere and you can just become James Stewart in one day on the game. These games have really advanced. There is a true skill to these games now, not just in a simulator aspect, but also in the arcade games. There's real skill to these games that takes you I say it does, it should take you years to master it, to truly master it. It should almost feel like there is no cap to the skill you can get in the game. It should feel like it's got this unlimited skill gap to it, but still be somewhat like beginner user friendly, because it's an arcade game. You don't want it to be like MX Simulator where it's just so hard to learn. But okay, let's get in here. So it says, let's see. So I find it to be a little bit bizarre that they're going down the MXGP route, like I was saying. I'm not really sure, what kind of tracks it's exactly going to have or whatever, but it kind of scares me that it's like MXGP Pro. So, like, what does this mean? Are we splitting the community now where we've got MXGP Pro and then we've got MXGP 4 over here coming out some other time? I mean, is that how it's going to be? Or is it just going to be MXGP Pro 1, 2, 3 from here on out? Or is all the milestones going to be this, like, quote-unquote pro physics from here on out? Like, what's going on here? It's kind of weird how they've just kind of slapped the pro on the end of MXGP. Maybe they're really trying to prove a point with the title of it so it really gets your attention, but all of the future milestone games are going to have this sort of pro physics. That's how they should do it. And it's not to say you can't have an easier filling on an arcade game. You have to widen the skill gap. Like, you have to widen basically the sliders of the pro physics. You can have like a setting in there that's like, it's like your standard beginner physics, and then you got like your amateur physics kind of system. Then you work your way up to the pro physics, which is like a really hard thing to learn. You got a lot of leaning on the bike. You've got a lot of movement forward and backwards on the bike. So you're going to be able to do a lot more on the bike, but it's also going to be a lot more risk to riding like that. So, okay. So this first little thing is the start and braking precision. So Antonio Caroli, 9 times MXGP world champion, has worked with our team on the new pro physics. He'll help you learn how to take advantage of the starting grid and how to brake precisely. Be sure to clutch control and spring at lightning speed at the beginning of the race and brake not a second earlier or later. So I've always thought the MXGP games, their best aspects have been like in the corners. That's where they've really strived, is like the braking and throttle and turning in the corners. I mean, it always could have had a little bit more turning, and obviously not even getting into the terrain deformation and how the actual corners are built. That's another really big problem with the milestone games, like especially like your MXGP2 and even a little bit into 3. Like, the corners are just super smooth. There needs to be more rutted, rough corners in these games and multiple line options. It seems like they just got that like super flat area, and then you got one big, like, not big berm, but one berm all the way around the outside of the track, little short berm. Everybody just goes in the exact same spot. So they really need to fix that. But this looks like the braking and all that and the starts are going to be a little bit more skill gapped. Hoping there's really not a whole lot out there on this game right now. This is a very early, even though it's coming out in like 2 months or something like that. It's still like very, very early. So I don't really know. And their website doesn't really say just a whole lot about it. The trailer's really short, doesn't really show any gameplay. So they're probably keeping that gameplay to themselves until they really get, like, it doesn't show third person, like a full race of gameplay, so you can't really see how it's going to be from that or anything. But okay, so the scrubs and air control. One of the biggest problems with milestone games is the air physics. That's what I've always talked about. It's not so much the ground physics, it's the air physics and the jump physics and all that. So it says, who better than Tim Geiser, 2 world titles, could have helped our team while working on the air control with the pro physics activated. Okay. With the pro physics activated, you'll have a chance to manage more control on your rider while he's in mid-air. Have fun whipping, scrubbing, and passing through whoop sections like never before. Okay. I really hope they've learned that some of us want to whip with both of our thumbsticks the same direction instead of opposite directions. Please, for the love of Pastrana, God, put that in to the game It's not going to hurt anybody putting it into the game. It's just going to make some people way more happy. You can still have your default turn it the opposite directions for the actual game itself, but give us the option to where you turn the thumbsticks both the same direction to whip one way. And if you want to put like, turn up whips in there, then it's the opposite of that with whichever control you're actually using. So have it said with the pro physics activated. So I don't know if this game is going to be like where you get into it and the pro physics aren't necessarily activated. Like, it's got like a super easy kind of like a arcade mode to it, and then you activate the pro physics once you get in there. I guess that's how it's going to be. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, so it's acting like you're going to have more control on the rider. This game, the milestone games have always lacked in that pulling up on the jump faces and being able to angle the bike downward, forward, backwards movement. You understand what I'm saying? They haven't struggled so much with left to right movement on the ground, but that forward, backwards movement is just terrible in these games. There's hardly any of it. And it makes it to where it feels like you don't come off of a jump face really trying to lean back and huck it, because it's not going to do anything anyways. Because these games, when you lean back, it doesn't really do anything anyways. And that's a major aspect to like Reflex, MX Simulator, pretty much all of those MX versus ATV games and MX Simulator and in real life. The actual pulling back up a jump face to really huck something bigger than the average Joe rider to separate yourself, that's how you do it. That's how you hit huge huck lines that nobody else has ever hit before, and that's how you separate yourself from a beginner in rhythm sections and jumps and stuff. It's having that super amount of movement on the bike to where you can really get a lot of pull off of jump faces. That's what separates you, and these games have always been missing that to a certain extent. So that looks good. Hopefully they fix that in-air control, make it not as floaty. They need to make it to where when you jump into the air, your actual, like, once you get to that sort of float point and you start heading back downward, the gravity starts pulling you back down. It needs to pull you down at a harder, faster rate than it has been currently. Like when you jump up in the air, it kind of gives you that float in the air feeling, but when you come down, it needs to slam down harder than it does. It doesn't need to just glide down like a little feather floating down from outer space. Like, you need to, give us some more weight on the bike when we impact, and that will help when you come up short on a jump. You'll actually impact into it instead of just bouncing and ricocheting right off of it and not even losing any momentum. You got to have more of that force pushing down into the ground like in real life. When you over jump something or under jump something, I mean, it's like getting hit by a truck or a rhino. I mean, it is not a pleasurable experience like you're just landing on a cloud, like some of these motocross games have kind of turned into here. But when you eliminate that float feeling, it just makes everything better, man. So, okay, so cornering, when working on reproducing all the specifics of cornering, especially on wet ground, feel your dirt bike digging in the ground. Take advantage of the ruts to take corners at top speed, and take extra care. If you don't control them, ruts can become a disadvantage. So yes, this goes back to my point I was talking about. This game really needs like inside ruts that grab you, actual different lines on the track. It needs that really bad. And you could even have some tracks that have ruts going up the jump face that really affects how the bike steers coming up the jump. And that adds more skill gap to if you have like smaller jump sections or whatever the case may be. But it looks like, especially on wet ground, is what they said specifically. So, yeah, I mean, the wet tracks in these, milestone games that they've had the past two games, I mean, they're definitely a cool addition. It's probably some of the best, visually looking wet tracks in any motocross game out there. But as far as the actual gameplay elements of it, that's where it lacks a little bit. I feel like when you're on the wet tracks, it just feels like you've got maybe a a little bit more friction to the dirt. You know, you're not going quite as fast, but it doesn't really feel super slick or anything. It doesn't really feel like the bike's ever just going to fall over on you, really, like in real life. You know how real life you've constantly got that slicker than snot feeling with your front wheel, and it's like you're on ice, and that's really what they need to get it closer to for this MXGP Pro game here. So hopefully they meant inside ruts and not just that super long outside berm that everybody and their grandmother takes on milestone games. Hopefully they've fixed that. But yeah, that's about it. I mean, not much more here. Man, the milestone dudes, they're spitting the games out. I know that for sure. They're like on that 2 games a year vibe action. So it's this is definitely not what I expected. I was expecting more of a actual AMA national. I figured they would have just split those games up, you know, the Supercross and the national stuff. But I don't know, man. The games are like they're changing so much over the years that if you like played MXGP 2 and got really good at that game, this game is going to be totally different. I mean, completely different. So it would be cool to see them get to a point where they feel like they've really got their physics to a good level. They feel like they've really got a decent skill gap going, and then they put in all of the content in one game. You know, like for instance, you could just have like the motocross mecha game, and you could have like, you know, all the Supercross tracks of 1 year, all of the AMA national tracks of 1 year, all of the MXGP tracks of 1 year, and then maybe some other random tracks in the game, track editor with all of those different pieces and the pro physics in that. If they put all that in one $60 game, by golly, dude, that would be fucking amazing. I mean, that would be the golden ticket, because they're on this thing where they're splitting the community into 30 different areas. You know, when you split the Supercross, you split the motocross, coming out with 2 games a year. Then you got like this MXGP Pro. So it's like, you know, it's kind of like splintering all over the place. And I feel like if they just get all of their motocross games and ideas and bases and put them into one game, then you'll have a super solid experience there. But yeah, that's the first opinions on it. So appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.